Hello, everyone, and welcome to the weekly horror report. I'm Robert. Hopefully, the sound quality is a little better than the last podcast. And in this episode, I want to go over horror movies. My favorite ones, remakes, and, just have a chat about horror movies, because why not? So, I really wanted to start with remakes and why I personally don't like them and why I feel like they tend to get a bad rep. Now, I'm going to start with the most recent one, sort of, not counting in Chapter 2, but I'm going to be talking about Child's Play right now. Now, when you take a really popular movie, like a popular franchise, and decide to take away what made it unique and special, that's what threw me off. Because, the movie had a good concept. The whole AI gone awry. But I feel like that would be more suited for maybe, Five Nights at Freddy's movie, and not specifically a Chucky movie. Or even a whole different movie in general. But it's not a bad movie. But it's not a fit for the franchise. Because everybody knows that Chucky is a possessed doll, possessed by a murderer, that, tries to kill Andy to steal his body so he can become human again. Which, to be honest, is kind of dumb, because if you're a doll, you can basically live forever. But anyway, and they always, with remakes, what I've realized is they always try to strip away the comedy that was really popular with these, 80s horror movie franchises. Like Nightmare on Elm Street and Child's Play. And I feel when you strip away an entire character and try to go back to the beginning of their origins, it just doesn't work. Especially like in Child's Play, when the origins weren't even the one from Chucky. To me, the whole movie just fell off. But another one is Nightmare on Elm Street. They did a remake, I think, back in 2009 that flopped. And it's not like I said, these aren't bad movies. But you're stripping away what makes the characters unique in themselves. Because you'll have like the Michael Myers, the Jason Voorhees, where pretty much any person could be them. Because it's like a mask and, it's not really a character that is known for the person playing it. Unlike, Child's Play and Nightmare on Elm Street, where, for Child's Play, everybody was so used to Brad Dourif's, portrayal of Chucky. And that became iconic, and just like Freddy Krueger, Robert Englund's version, like, you can't top that, especially when for the new Nightmare on Elm Street, they only wanted to focus on the horror element, which is fine, but you have to remember that the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie didn't really do that good. It wasn't really until the sequels when Freddy started to have like a personality and jokes and comedic timing that the character actually became popular. So, like, yes, Freddy was a child molester, child killer, and all that stuff. And I feel like they kinda did the character injustice by just focusing in on that. And I wish that they would just stop doing remakes of 80s and 90s horror movies, because they're just never gonna have that, spark, or whatever you want to say, that made the character the character. Now, the only exception I can say for my horror movie thing would have to be It and It Chapter 2. And the only reason is because when it originally came out, it was a mini-series on ABC. So for the most part, they had to keep everything PG-13. So there was a lot that had to be left out of the story. So with It and It Chapter 2, the good thing they did was split it up into two separate movies. The kid version, and then when they grew up, the adult aspect. And they also added to Pennywise's character. They were able to make him more sinister and how the book really portrayed him. Now, even saying that, I will admit Tim Curry's version of Pennywise will always be my favorite. I think it's just like, especially when it comes to horror movies of the time, like the whole comedic aspect to it. I just love that kind of stuff, and especially practical effects. Like, I like CGI, don't get me wrong, but I feel like sometimes it's a bit overused. And like, if you're constantly using CGI, like, you can tell something's absolutely fake. And that's one of the things I loved about the old, Nightmare on Elm Street, Child's Play, is their use of practical effects that gives it like a bit of realness, because it feels more real because you can see it genuinely like happening, instead of just like a computer animated portion of it. But as I was saying in It Chapter 2, I really liked it just because it was able to go more in depth with the actual story and not leave much out. I feel like the only part that kind of did it injustice was changing the timeline. Whereas, like, in the original and the book, it was, in the 50s or 60s. And then later on, like, it was still like 80s or 90s or something like that. But I feel like the only exception to, like, this rule for remakes is if the story didn't feel complete, especially if it's based off of a book. And I think that's what really played into it and It Chapter 2's favor, is because there was just so much that could be added. And there's a lot of remakes of horror movies that I completely forgot about just because it seems like they didn't do that good. Like Friday the 13th, for example. They remade it. I don't even know when they remade it. But I do have the DVD, and that's probably the only reason I can remember it. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that was actually good because I never saw the original, so I had nothing to base it off of at the time when I watched the new one. And I feel like that's a big part. Like, the movies aren't bad, but people have an expectation of what they expect the movie to be because of the name that it's piggybacking on. And also, if you're going to replace the lead actor, you gotta have somebody that at least has the comedic ability. Which, like Mark Hamill, like, I know he can be comedic. Like, I used to watch, the Batman series that he did, so, like, I know he has, a good comedic vibe to him, but the person who played Freddy Krueger in the new Nightmare on Elm Street didn't, and it just felt like too much focusing on the horror for the franchise it was being a part of. And I just think that unless there can be like 100% certainty that the movie will be a success, especially if you're going off of a franchise. If you're going off of a franchise, don't try to fix something that's not broken. Don't try to do your own thing with a franchise that's already established. But yeah, so that's my take on horror movie remakes. And yeah, just don't do it. Don't do a horror movie remake unless you know for 100% certainty that it's going to be good. So now I want to talk about my favorite horror movies. And I have to say the Child's Play franchise is my number one. Hands down. There was a time when I didn't have cable, and all I could watch was, DVDs, and I have the entire Child's Play franchise, Nightmare on Elm Street. I know this isn't technically a movie, but True Blood. I used to watch True Blood all the time. It was probably like one of my favorite shows. But, so at this time in my life, I didn't have any cable, so all I could do was watch DVDs, so I would just every night when I would come home from work, pop in one of my Child's Play DVDs and just watch it. And I probably watched the entire series at least 100 times, maybe more, because I didn't have cable or internet for the longest time during that period. And I would have to say that my favorites out of the entire franchise would probably have to be Child's Play 2 and 3, Bride of Chucky, and Seed of Chucky. Because I think that's when, the comedy really started to take off. Oh, and another one I really liked was the newest one, Cult of Chucky. That was the last one that Brad Dourif did. It was on Netflix for a little while, and that's where I watched it. I don't know exactly when it came out. I think it might have been 2016 that it came out, or 2017. I don't know. But anyway, another one of my favorite franchises is the Nightmare on Elm Street. And, I'm not particularly a fan of the first one, but my favorites are definitely the third one, Dream Warriors, and then I do like New Nightmare. Freddy's Dead was okay. It was weird, but it was okay. I used to watch the second one a lot when I would work overnights at one of my jobs. And I would come home, eat my breakfast, watch that, and go to bed. But, and I do want to talk about True Blood. I know it's not a movie, but the storyline is just so good, and I wish it didn't end. Because honestly, that was one of my favorite shows, along with Weeds, but Weeds isn't a horror movie, so we're not going to talk about that in this podcast. I'd have to say my favorite season for True Blood, probably I think it's the third one, with the witches, and what else happened in the third one? I know there was the witch group. Oh, and the fairies. Yeah, I think that's when the fairies were introduced, was in the third one. Or was it the fourth? No, the third was the werewolves, and the fourth was the witches and the fairies. But anyway, I'm just rambling on here. what I want to do with this podcast is kind of like split it up between Tuesdays and Fridays. I know it's the weekly horror report, but I kind of want to do like a True Crime Tuesday, and then Fridays are for like stuff like this, or telling horror stories that are on like Reddit or creepypastas, or your own personal stories. So let me know if this is something that you would be interested in. 2 podcasts a week instead of 1. And I think that's where I'm going to wrap this up now. If you like it, please subscribe, keep listening. If you want to help out, I have my tip jar at robertfosterart.com/tipjar, where you can donate to help support the podcast and my art. And you can go to robertfosterart.com to buy any of my merch, or request a commission. Commissions usually take me around 1 to 2 weeks to complete. And my Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. I'm trying to build up my YouTube, especially with these podcasts on there too. So if you want to go check that out, just search Robert Foster Art, because I don't have a screen name yet, because I don't have a lot of subscribers. But when I do, it'll be youtube.com/RobertFosterArt. And I hope you enjoyed. I'll catch you in the next one for a True Crime Tuesday.